Hello people of Earth, I am Neroamee Alucard, the Madman, and today we are going to be reviewing, drumroll please, Batman Under the Red Hood. Let's go. Anyway, while we're on the subject of Batman, Batman Under the Red Hood can be seen as the follow-up to the story Batman, A Death in the Family, which chronicled the death of Jason Todd, the second Robin. Now, if you've been familiar with comics since about the mid-1980s, you're probably well aware of the fact that Dick Grayson was far from the only Robin. In fact, while he was the first one, there have been 5. 6 if you want to count Katie Kelly from The Dark Knight Returns, but that's a story for another day, literally. Moving along, Jason Todd was the second Robin and took up the reins of Robin after Dick Grayson became Nightwing. Duh. Moving along, Jason Todd quite clearly isn't up to Dick Grayson's standard, but in acrobatics but more than makes up for it with teen angsty rage and edginess, yo. In fact, Batman first encountered Jason Todd, but after he found him trying to steal tires off the Batmobile. He managed to get one of them off before he came back to finish the job. That's awesome. I gotta give him that. Anyway, through a rather convoluted storyline, Jason Todd ends up dead. The funny thing is, the only reason he ended up dead, aside from writing that story arc, was because it was literally held to a vote. Seriously, you sick monsters voted to kill a 10-year-old in a comic book. What kind of horrible, craven people are you? Moving along, as we all know, the only character in comics that stays dead permanently is Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. So many years later, Jason Todd was resurrected by Ra's al Ghul, or at least on his orders, and becomes the Red Hood in this story arc, which I will summarize in a moment. Alright then, now that that plot's been summarized, let's talk about the things I loved about this comic. One thing, the fight scenes. If there's one thing Batman does tend to get right consistently over the many years of his comics, it's his fight scenes. They're always dramatic, emphasize his strengths and weaknesses, as well as the strengths and weaknesses of his opponents. One little detail I love is that during the scene where Batman and Nightwing are chasing the Red Hood in the first place, Nightwing's movements are seen as drawn as much more flourish-filled and acrobatic given his background as well as trapeze artist. Batman is all about silent and cold efficiency, so he often lands on his feet or rolls with the momentum. Jason is more parkour influenced, but still very much a gifted athlete. It's little details like that that really add a lot of character to, well, comic book characters, which, depending on the writer, either have little to no character at all, an excess amount of character, or in the case of this storyline, just the right sweet spot amount of character. Yes, it's possible for a character to have too much character to totally analyze, and I'll get to that another day. Moving along, another thing I love about this story is, well, the dialogue. It emphasizes each character's personalities in ways that, well, it's difficult to do without hearing a voice. When I read Batman's dialogue, I heard Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman in Batman the Animated Series. When I heard Dick Grayson, I didn't hear an angsty teenager. I heard, well, an adult who's obviously in his 20s and mature, but still has a penchant for wisecracking and being funny. And when I heard Jason Todd talk, I heard someone cold, efficient, and ruthless, near pushed insane by the very circumstances that caused him to come back to this earth. But for all to be positive, there must be a negative, and I guess the only real negative is you won't understand a lot of the callbacks in this story unless you've actually read Batman: A Death in the Family, which originally was written sometime in the 1980s. Anyways, give this a read. It's from 2006, so it's not like it's really going to be really hard to come by, but give this a read. Anyway, with all of that being said, I am Neroamee Alucard, the Madman. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Now I must go. My planet does in fact need me. Peace.